Good evening and welcome to the Rhode Island House District 30 Candidates Forum. I'm Elizabeth McNamara, editor of East Greenwich News. We are presenting this forum tonight with the support of the East Greenwich Chamber of Commerce. The questions I will be asking tonight are culled from those submitted by our readers. We will start with opening statements from each candidate, followed by several rounds of questions. The forum will end with closing statements from the candidates. Now I will bring in the candidates. Hello, Justine.
And Zipper. Hello.
And hello, Anthony.
Hello, ladies.
Welcome to you both, and thank you for participating, and thank you for being part of this political process. So we're doing this alphabetical order. We're going to have Justine start with her opening comments. She has 2 minutes to make her opening comments. If you see me, those of you who are watching, if you see me waving something, that's my way of signaling to the speaker that they're running close to the end of their time. After she speaks, Anthony will get a chance to give his opening remarks, and then we will launch into questions. Each candidate has an opportunity to respond or to answer the question. Since Justine is going first with her opening statements, Anthony will go first with the questions. Then Justine will respond. We'll give her answer, and then if Anthony has a rebuttal, he will get a chance at that point for a up to 1 minute rebuttal. You don't need to use them, and you certainly don't need to take all that time. We'll see how this goes, but thank you both, and we'll start with Justine.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. We could get the kids upstairs, but we forgot about the cat, so I have an extra guest tonight here.
Well, my son started playing the piano, so.
Yeah. So 2 years ago, well, first I want to really thank you, Elizabeth, for hosting this forum, and I want to really thank the leaders of House District 30 for entrusting me with this job for the past 2 years. 2 years ago, I stood at a podium in a crowded room of people and told you what I was going to do. And now we're here on this video conference in the middle of a global pandemic, and I get to tell you what I did with those 2 years. So one of the first things I did after you elected me was I attended the annual House Christmas party, which I'm sure Anthony had attended for the years past. I didn't know many of the people there, and they didn't really know me. The only thing many of them knew about me was that 2 days after the election, I attended the House Democratic Caucus, and I made a speech about why I was going to vote against the Speaker. And it was a bold thing to do as a freshman, but I really wanted to be clear about where I stood and why my constituents had just elected me. So that night at the Christmas party, I met Representative Marvin Abney, the chairman of our finance committee, and we talked a lot about the session to come. He told me, to always follow my conscience and do the right thing, but to always be upfront about it, to tell people where I stood, and to be the kind of person and colleague that people could disagree with and still trust. Soon after that, I had another conversation with another senior member of the House who really told me, this is a crazy place. There's always a lot of stuff happening. And when you're trying to decide what to do, always remember why you came here. People come to that house for different reasons. Remember yours and focus on it when you make your decisions. I ran because I wanted a representative who shared my values, and I thought my community wanted a representative who shared my values. And the election results from 2 years ago show that I was right. I've been able to work on a lot of issues, and we'll talk about those issues tonight, from school funding to Roe versus Wade, from gun violence to rules reform. When I stood against leadership, I did it with integrity. After fighting against leadership for rules reform, I kept being upfront and honest, as Chairman Abney had advised me to do, and that enabled me to continue working with everyone, from the most conservative Democrats to the most conservative Republicans to the most liberal Democrats in House leadership. That's how I've done the job. That's how I intend to keep doing this job. And over the next hour, I'm looking forward into getting to more detail on the issues in this race. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Justine. Anthony, it's your turn.
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank the East Greenwich Chamber of Commerce and EG News for organizing this forum. and to all of you watching at home. For those who don't know me, I'm Anthony Giarrusso. I'm running again to represent the residents of East and West Greenwich in House District 30. I'm a husband, father of 4 children who have attended, and still one of them still attends East Greenwich Public Schools. I'm a small business owner. I'm a former state representative, having been elected 3 times by the voters of East and West Greenwich. I'm a proud Rhode Islander. I'm an immigrant, moving here at age 4 without speaking a word of English, and proud of what I have accomplished in the State House. While serving as state representative, I was a member of the House Finance Committee and committees on corporations, economic development, labor, and small business. All of these reflect my sense of what are the major issues facing Rhode Island and the problems that that the state must work the hardest to solve. As a small business owner, I understand the significant financial and bureaucratic burdens to not just open but operate a business in Rhode Island. Some 96% of businesses in Rhode Island are small businesses. And we rely on them extensively for training and tax revenues. And accordingly, we need to create a climate for business, small and large, that is friendly, stable, and predictable. So what's this election really all about? It's not just words, but leadership. My opponent runs as someone who will bring change to the General Assembly, but instead voted over 99% of the time with the House Speaker. That's not leadership. You've elected me 3 times before because you believe in what I stand for. And you know, I mean what I say and I say what I mean. I haven't changed that, nor have I lost my focus on getting important legislation done. I'm humbly asking you for your support again and asking for your vote to return me to Smith Hill. I'm committed to representing you and no one else. I never, nor would I ever mislead you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we move to the questions. The first question will start with Anthony. Just checking my timers here. Again, you have 2 minutes to answer, up to 2 minutes to answer the question. And the first one is, how would you rate Governor Raimondo's handling of the pandemic? And what role should the House have right now?
God, that's a very complicated question because, you know, our Constitution says that we have 3 branches of government, and right now we only have 2. I am so disappointed in the House and Senate that they just shut down one branch of the government. No checks and balances. We have a executive branch that became a monarchy in the process, and whether I rate her highly or low or not at all, it's irrelevant. I just think that there should have been more checks and balances. I think she's doing a really bad job with all the one thing for sure, there's with the money that was supposed to be used in the CARES Act. I think it's horrendous that money's not going to these businesses that are shutting their doors forever. And it's so hard. Rhode Island's such an unbusiness friendly state to begin with. I could just imagine what it's going to be like when you're losing businesses that are already here and have been here contributing to the economy. I just can't, I have no words for that. It's despicable. I can't stand to open up the newspaper and see every day there's another business that's closing for good. And that's more people on unemployment. And ultimately more people will have to leave this state. And next thing you know, we're going to lose a congressman.
Okay, thank you. Justine, the same question to you. How would you rate the Governor Raimondo's handling of the pandemic, and what role should the House have right now?
Thanks, Elizabeth. I, along with a majority of Rhode Islanders and people around the nation, would rate Governor Raimondo and Dr. Alexander Scott as doing an exceptional job during this pandemic. We, as the small state of Rhode Island, has done one of the best jobs out of all the other states in the country at managing this pandemic. So I think she has done a fabulous job. I've been proud to work with her and all of her state agencies, like the Department of Health with Dr. Scott, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Labor and Training with Rhode. They have done the best they can with the resources they have. That doesn't mean it's been perfect. It's been far from perfect, mostly because of the mismanagement at the federal level by President Trump, who, Anthony supports for president. And so, that is really one of the biggest issues that we've had. In regards to the House, I have been probably busier than I've ever been as a rep, during this amount of time. Part of the job is passing legislation. Part of the job is helping constituents. I have helped a countless number of constituents get their unemployment, keep their utilities on, help them keep their businesses open and kind of navigate the labyrinthian systems the federal government had set up for folks to get their money. It has been really busy. I was an early advocate of the House to go back into session. I made those wishes known to the leaders in my chamber. That wasn't the decision that folks had made. But I think, I work with all these offices. We are in constant contact. It's not as if, we don't have a say or a role in the decisions that are happening, for our constituents and for our cities and towns.
Okay, thank you. Any rebuttal from you, Anthony?
Yeah, I just have one issue about bringing the federal government into this. So the federal government supplied us with a lot of money, with CARES Act, over $1 billion in CARES Act that's supposed to be to keep these businesses open during this pandemic. And to not spend it on that, I think it's despicable. The government's not in charge of running our state. We have the money and it's not being spent the right way. It certainly shouldn't be used to plug holes in a budget that we was spending like reckless, like drunken sailors. And I mean no disrespect to drunken sailors.
Just to interject, some of that budget hole has to do with revenues that won't be earned because of COVID. For instance, our casino revenue, the revenue we get from casinos is down. So just to interject that it's not all past spending. I
definitely get that, and true. That's absolutely true. But still, there's a lot of businesses that are closing their doors. They're not getting the money that was intended for that.
Okay, thank you for that. The second question, we'll start with Justine first. Rhode Island is considering considering legislation to ban new assault weapon sales, limit firearm magazine capacity, and require safe storage of firearms. Which of these gun safety measures do you support?
Thank you. Well, I support all of them because they're all by bills in the House. So I'm the lead sponsor on a bill to ban assault weapons. I'm the lead sponsor to ban a bill on high-capacity magazines, which are magazines with ammunition with over 10 rounds, and the lead sponsor on a bill to require safe storage. The first year I was there, these bills were also introduced in conjunction with the governor's office and Attorney General Peter Nerona. These bills are so important. We are living through a pandemic right now, a global health crisis. The crisis of gun violence has continued to escalate during this time, even here in Rhode Island. I went to a gun range during this session to learn about these weapons, to load them, to fire them. I used many different kinds. I fired magazines with over 10 rounds. Those are not weapons people need to use to protect themselves against a home intruder. Those high capacity magazines, which is my top priority bill, make it so that the shooter in Dayton, Ohio, I might be mixing up two mass shootings at that point, but could, shoot like over 100 rounds in about 45 seconds, killing so many people. Right now in Rhode Island, it's legal to buy a magazine with 100 rounds of bullets in it. So you can shoot 100 times without stopping. Even in that shooting where he had those huge rounds, police officers, right, a good guy with a gun could not get there fast enough to save lives. Those are weapons of war. They belong nowhere here. And in this race, this choice could not be clearer. Anthony, when he was in the House for 6 years, voted with the NRA every time. He voted with the NRA when they told him to vote against a bill to take guns out of the hands of convicted domestic abusers. Okay, this choice could not be clearer in this race. I am so proud to be a sponsor of those bills. I hear about this issue at the door all the time when I knock on doors in East Greenwich, and I see no reason why we can't pass them when we reconvene in January.
All right, thank you. Anthony, to you, these gun legislation bills to ban new assault weapon sales, limit firearm magazine capacity, and requires safe storage of firearms. Which of these measures do you support?
By the way, I love the constant narrative, because if you keep lying over and over again, eventually it'll sound like it's the truth. I'm not in bed with the NRA. I don't own a gun. I don't even belong to the NRA. But what I am is I'm a proud American who supports the Constitution. And if something has a constitutional element to it, I will vote against it 100% of the time. And as you said, Justine, that I lied, that the ACLU did not support that, check your facts, because one of us is lying, and I don't think it's me. But it's all about the Constitution. And as far as your question, banning these assault weapons, my fear is when you ban these things, who's going to give them up? The law-abiding citizens. Who's going to keep them? The criminals. I mean, how many criminals? You know, there could be a sign on the breakfast place down south. It says no guns allowed. Did the criminal? Oh God, I better put my gun away because the thing says no guns allowed. Criminals are not going to be the ones to get rid of these things. And by the way, when I served in the legislature, I was on one of those field trips too, and I thought it was a very useful one because I'd never been to a gun range before, and it was very useful. And it was basically what the master or the pro or the teacher or whatever you call the person that's the expert at the range. He said they're talking about banning I think it was the AR-15 or whatever it is. He was showing the cartridges that hold the bullets. He said, I don't know how many they hold, maybe 6 or 10 or 12. I don't really know. As I said, I'm about as novice as you could possibly get when it comes to guns. But he said, how quickly do you think I can change this cartridge or whatever they call that thing? And I said, I don't know, maybe 15 seconds it'll take you to do it. It took him 0.3 of a second to change it. So if he's shooting off, if there's 10 in that magazine, that's what it's called, a magazine. If there are 10 in that magazine, and he's got 10, 15 or 20 of them, it's just basically going to take him no time at all to do that. And that's the takeaway I got from that.
Okay, Justine, you have 1 minute to rebut.
Sure. Well, I do believe you're a novice on these matters from the way that I hear you talking about it. So I think everybody after that will probably believe that. The ACLU did not take a position on that bill. It is not me lying. We checked with the ACLU because that's my memory. We sent a letter in response to Elizabeth. So you're mixing that up with another gun bill that you were in Florida when the House voted on several times, which was our red flag bill. So the ACLU did not take a position on the bill to take guns away from convicted domestic abusers, nor did they take a position on the final red flag bill, which they did not oppose.
Well, I guess we can agree to disagree, but I remember specifically.
That's not agreeing to disagree. That is the fact. So.
Right,
yeah, and we'll stop there, Anthony. I do understand we can check this stuff offline and I'll write about it, but I would like to move on.
Right, their problem was due process. It's in the Constitution. It takes away due process. Check it out.
Okay, so Anthony, you supported Nick Mattiello as Speaker in the past. Would you support him if you win and he wins re-election? Justine, you did not vote for the Speaker 2 years ago, but you have been on the same side for many votes during your term, and he has donated to your campaign. Would you support him as Speaker? And for both of you, would you support reducing the power of the Speaker? So we'll start with Anthony.
Well, I just want to put one thing in context. Did I support the Speaker? Absolutely, I did. It was after another Speaker took the walk of shame. The latest Speaker that actually had to go to jail, and we had a choice to make. There were a couple factions. There was this group and that group, and we in the Republican caucus, we made a consensus decision that we would support the one that at that time was more in line with us, and that happened to be Nick Mattiello. So that's the first time I supported him. It's the last time I support him, and I will not support him if I'm lucky enough to win this election in November. Was there another question, Elizabeth?
Yeah, the other part was about are you comfortable with the amount of power the Speaker of the House has in the state?
No, definitely not. I'm not, ultimately what the Speaker is a member of the House of Representatives, no different than Justine or what I was, 6 years prior. He's just a representative that represents a district about the size of ours. And why should we be more powerful than the governor, who needs 300,000 votes or whatever it is to win an election? I totally don't think that the Speaker should have as much power. I think that I support line item veto, and I know they definitely wouldn't. I think line item veto just takes a lot of power away from the Speaker and shifts it more to the executive branch, and I fully support that.
Okay, thank you. Justine, the same question to you. Do you need me to repeat it, or are you?
I think I'm good. If I miss something, you can
Okay.
remind me at the end. Thank you. So my memory is that also you voted for the Speaker 2 out of your 3 terms, so voted for him twice and not just once, like you just said. And I have voted against him twice at our House caucus. And, when I started in the chamber, when we all had to vote on who was going to be Speaker. So, like I said in this debate 2 years ago, both the Speaker and I have a race to win in November. I don't know what is going to happen in his. I hope I know what is going to happen in mine. I'm going to be looking for a Speaker that supports the issues I support, that supports getting legislation through that will help the people of my district and our town council and our school committee need. In regards to, having his support, I have the support of many of my colleagues, and I'm very surprised, and I'm not surprised, I'm very grateful to have it. I have a lot of them out knocking on doors with me. I have many of them who have donated to my campaign, and I think that's the best person. Anthony, get this narrative out that I voted with the Speaker, 99.something% of the time. That figure comes from the Gatsby Project, which is like a right-wing radical media organization who's being sued in court for not releasing their donors, and who sends out mailers saying that I'm hell-bent on destroying America. Like, that's not a reliable source, and either Anthony can't tell that, or he doesn't care because it aligns with his viewpoint. I work with everyone in the House, and I'm happy to do it. I also support the line item veto. I said that 2 years ago. Said it the whole time I was in the House. But I don't know who's going to be in the Speaker's race yet. And, it's presumptuous to say anything before it happens. But I am proud to have everybody's support, many of my colleagues, not just the Speaker's.
Okay, thank you. Anthony, any rebuttal?
Absolutely. Since you're in the business of verifying everything, could you tell us what your percentage is? And could you give me like an example of what bill did you vote against?
Oh, I would love to talk about that, Anthony, because it's really quality and not quantity. And as you know, most of our votes in the House are unanimous.
Of course.
So the Gatsby Project, be that as it may, says you voted with him 99.1%, 91.3% or whatever. So I did. I voted against him as Speaker. I voted separately from the Speaker when we voted on all of our rules reforms. And I voted separately on the Speaker on our bill to protect Roe versus Wade, which codified the right to abortion in Rhode Island, which we now know is so incredibly important, given Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death and our new Supreme Court justice being rammed through by the president you support, that will try to roll back protections for women across the country and here in Rhode Island.
Thank you for that. I am hearing, I know we have some feedback for a couple of us, and I've been told that I should try and mute those of us who are not speaking. I'm going to give that a try to make this a better experience, and I do apologize. Let me just see how to do that. Yeah, so I will be muting. So for the next question, it is Justine first. And it is, what should the General Assembly be doing to encourage businesses to locate here in Rhode Island? And let me unmute you. Sorry, you guys are going to have to be patient with me. I'm going to be
okay.
slow.
I'll wave. I'm used to it. I'm sick of seeing myself on these Zoom videos. That is a great question. It's obviously a difficult time that we're living in to answer that, seeing as we're, everyone across across the country is struggling so much. But I think this gives us a really great opportunity. Rhode Island is a great place to live. It has a vibrant culture. It has, a lot of things going for it. The one thing that we would want people to, right, is to come here when they might work remotely or to bring their businesses here. And I think one of the best things we can do about that is, obviously fixing our educational system. When people want to come and they want to live in a great city like Providence, they want to work there, they want to bring their businesses there, they want to live in East Greenwich, looking at the public schools is one of the first things that they do. So I think strengthening our school systems is really important. My husband is also a small business owner, so my family is powered by the engines of small business here in Rhode Island. And I do see a lot of bureaucratic red tape that folks go through that I think we could make a lot simpler for people. And I do think the pandemic has given us a unique opportunity to work with DBR, the Departments of Business Regulation, and to work with the Department of Ed, to really strengthen these systems, to streamline them. It's really important for us that we have people who want to come here and businesses who want to come here. But that means the first thing we need to do is make progress in this pandemic, because it's going to be hard for people to open new businesses, to move anywhere, to start a new business. If nobody can come and shop at it and they can't hire employees to work at it because they're not healthy, and because, they can't do anything because their kids got sent home from school because of a pandemic. So I think that is first and foremost on my mind when we talk about businesses. But I think for sure, strengthening our schools, which we have a lot of work to do on. They're great, but we could do a lot better, not just in this district, all around the state. And, just really making sure that we're a place where people want to come and send their kids to school. That's it.
Okay, thank you. No, thanks. It's going to take me a minute to figure out how to unmute fast enough to be good. I'm going to mute you now, and we're going to go to Anthony now. So Anthony, again, what should the General Assembly be doing to encourage businesses to locate here in Rhode Island?
Well, me and, while I was in the House, my biggest advocacy was what my strength is as an entrepreneur. And I know what the hurdles are. And one of the biggest problems is, we live in a death by 1,000 paper cut state. They tax you on your taxes. It's unbelievable. We've gone away from, we've had bills to get rid of the tangible property tax. That's a really terrible thing. And everyone that's in business complains about it. That every year they're paying taxes on their chairs and their desks and their computers and their phones. That's just one. We have so many regulations, the minimum corporate tax, that they don't have in competing states. And I agree 100% with Justine. This is an unbelievable state. I love this state. Now I could put my business anywhere. I get tons of mail, phone calls from chambers of commerce in other states that come here, will give you an incentive, but I won't leave. I'd rather go out of business than leave this state. I love this state. This state's been very good to me and my family. So I would have to say that that's where we need to start. Sometimes they don't see the big picture. I always like to use what happened in the boating industry. Our boating industry was really vibrant. There was no taxes on boats, and everyone had a boat, it seemed. The marinas were full. And all of a sudden, they decided to put taxes on boats and all that other stuff, and it started to dwindle down. And since then, they removed the taxes on boats again, and guess what? Try to get a slip somewhere. It's tough. And what that is the big picture is people that have boats spend money. They go to restaurants here. They come from other states. A lot of Massachusetts and Connecticut people have boats in Rhode Island to take advantage of our system. And one other thing I want to say is about schools. I happened to be born, I was born in Italy, but I was raised in a not so good zip code. I wasn't raised in 02818. I'm an inner city boy. And thankfully my father, my mother, they were really strong. And they made sure that we had a quality education regardless of the school that we had to go to. But Providence is struggling right now. I think we should do something about school choice. These kids have no chance otherwise if they're born in the wrong zip code. And all you need to do is look at Hope, Mount Pleasant, and Central, and tell me what the graduation and the literacy rates are. And that's all you need to know.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to mute you now, and Justine, you can respond if you would like to.
Sure. I mean, I also completely support, and said it last time, getting rid of the minimum corporate tax. I think it is pointless, and it is like unreasonable for businesses to have to pay it every year. But I think in reality, nobody is not moving here to start a business because of that tax. We really need to think more broadly about the different things that we can do. I was also not going through the public school system here in the 02818, as you put it. I grew up in Warwick, graduated from the Warwick Public Schools. And, I agree that, who your parents are and what they do and how they can help is a huge part of that. But, that's also dependent on a lot of your economic circumstances and a whole host of different things. And I hear the pitter patter of little feet. So I'm going to let you mute me and give myself 20 seconds of seeing what's up there before you go on. Thank you.
Okay. The next up, that means Anthony, you're up now. And a couple of environmental questions. Right now, regulation of solar power farms is done at the municipal level. We don't have so much of that in East Greenwich. We have a little. There's a lot more talk of that in West Greenwich. Would you support state guidelines for solar fields? And the plastic bag ban looked like it might pass this past season before COVID hit. Do you support a statewide ban on plastic bags? Hold on.
I'm actually really confused because I lived on this earth long enough to remember when that's all we had was paper bags and cartons of milk. We didn't have plastic bottles of milk. We had cans of soda, things like that. And all the environmental issues were cutting too many trees down. We got to save the trees. So hence comes the plastic bag. Now all of a sudden, we want to ban the plastic bag. Do we not care about the trees anymore? I'm really confused. I mean, I understand some issues with plastic bags. For one, I like them. I reuse them. I never throw them away. We use them for all the trash can liners in my house. I never buy them. So I'm afraid that once I become a criminal, if I have a plastic bag, I'll have to go to the store and buy some of those Glad bags. So I really don't support that. I think it's also a burden on businesses. That how much does it cost to buy 1,000 of these fancy paper bags versus what's it cost to buy 1,000 of those little tiny Dave's Market bags with the nice handles that you can actually carry your stuff out without having to worry about leaving it in their parking lot. And as far as the solar fields, I'm all for alternative energy. I think it's a great idea. I think the more the merrier. But it has to. I don't like the state getting involved in local issues. People move to a certain town because they like it for a reason. So I think it's the ultimate bait and switch. When someone moves to Gloucester or West Greenwich or East Greenwich because they love the setting of it, and then all of a sudden there's no more woods and no more deer running around because there's nothing but solar fields. That's my only issue. Let the municipal level deal with it. Because if we're constantly circumventing municipal authority, we might as well just have the city of Rhode Island and get rid of all the cities and towns.
Thank you. Now, Justine, to you, the same question about, first of all, the public or solar fields. Should we be doing that town by town? Yes, you can cut down trees here, you can't here, or should that be a state issue or state regulation? And then the plastic bag ban.
Sure. So I'll take the latter first. It's on my mind. I absolutely 110% support a plastic bag ban. It was, I think, certainly on its way to passage this year in the House. I sit next to Representative Carol McEntee, who's the lead sponsor on that ban. So I got to be privy to many, many, many conversations, that she had with advocates and other reps and everyone who came over to talk about it. Climate change is an issue that, you know, this is all about climate change, right? Climate change is an issue that we have to listen to scientists or experts about. None of the three of us are climate scientists, unless either of you have lived a former life that you have not mentioned yet. You know, this is like with the pandemic, you know, we cannot be listening to people who have, you know, no idea what they're talking about, but a stubborn resistance to change. And so absolutely the plastic bag man I support. You know, in the businesses in East Greenwich, we're doing it already. I know some of the bigger businesses got, you know, permission from the town to have a longer time to implement the plastic bag so that they could get ready for it. You know, this is like a we're all in it together strategy, you know, to protect us from climate change in a coastal town, coastal state and a coastal town. So absolutely, I support that bill. You know, I think it's irresponsible not to. Regarding the state and the municipal zoning about those solar farms, I am of two minds about it. I agree that some local control should be kept with those. There's people in the cities and towns, they know they're sitting in town, they know their residents, and I think that's really important. The one thing that makes me worried is when a city in town makes a decision that really directly affects another one that they might be adjacent to or they abut, and there's non-agreement among the two towns or cities or, you know, whatever. So that I would have to think more about before I said certainly one way or the other. But, you know, I think in that case, there is good reasons to support either issue, but I would probably defer to local control on those issues in particular.
Okay. Anthony, that means you get a rebuttal if you'd like one.
I'm really, I really don't need to. I mean, I said what I needed to say. I'm just confused about, you know, when we were worried about the trees, we're not worried anymore. That's all.
Okay, thanks for that. Next question. The state continues to lose population, which could cost us a Congress, a seat in U.S. Congress. What is the largest barrier for the state's population growth, for the state's population growth, and what steps should the state carry out to increase our population? Hold on. Sorry, this is Justine first. Hold on.
Thank you. You know, I want to start with saying one of the most damaging things that could happen to cause us to lose a seat, Rhode Island, right, is the fact that we would stop the census, which again is something that President Trump, who Anthony supports, wants to do. We need to make sure that everybody gets counted. The more people that get counted, if we count every Rhode Islander, you know, that is the most important thing we can do to make sure we retain that seat in the House. You know, I think this really gets back to the question of how can we bring people here, right? Because that is, how can we keep college students who either come to Rhode Island for our great colleges or are Rhode Islanders, right? I went to URI for my bachelor's and master's. I loved it there. You know, it's a big school, a lot of students. You know, how do we get these people to stay here in Rhode Island? And I think especially as our job outlook seems to be like more digital, right? More technology based and more remote. That's a really great opportunity that people, if this is a place they want to live, right, they will stay here no matter where they work. And that's a great opportunity for us to make sure that, you know, we have places that are affordable for people to live, and we have school districts where people want to send their kids to school.
Okay. All right, to you, Anthony. The question, you know, about losing population, possibly losing a congressperson. What can we do?
I think it's actually a very simple question. I mean, it's not very complicated. You know, our number one export for the years has been our children. That's a fact. I mean, I'm living it. I have 4 kids. 2 of them are done with college. Both of them are out of state. I have one that's just finishing up college. God only knows where he's going to end up. So I see it in my own home. But I also, it's also, I mentioned about the death by 1,000 paper cuts before, and it's the same thing. We have a horrible tax policy. And we've had bills, especially in our caucus, to do away with taxes on pensions. Take away state tax on pensions. Most states do. They do have, there's an exemption for that. So just look at the dynamics of this, right? I'll just give you a real live example that everybody can understand. You have two people, a husband and a wife, that both work for a municipality. Both working, one could be a teacher, one could be a firefighter or a police officer or whatever you may be. Drawing a salary for all the years that they've been actively employed. Now all of a sudden they're both retired. They're both getting a pension. And some of those pensions are pretty hefty. Could be a couple $100,000 when you combine the two together. I would have loved to know how many checks does Rhode Island send to other states that all of their money was made right here in Rhode Island, but it's too expensive to retire here. It's expensive to live here. It's expensive to die here. And I would love to know, like these people that are living 6 months in one day somewhere in New Hampshire or South Carolina or Florida, they could be spending their money at Dave's Market instead of Winn-Dixie. They could be going to Showcase Cinema instead of wherever they go there. And also schools. Education is a big deal. And I go back to getting these grades up and doing something about school choice, especially in the inner city kids like myself.
Thank you, Anthony. Justine, you have 1 minute to rebut if you'd like.
Sure, thank you. So first of all, I mean, a lot of people do retire very happily here, and a lot of kids do stay here. My brother and I are both here. My high school best friends and I are still all here. It is still a great place to live, work, and to retire. I meet a ton of retirees at the door, and they love still even living in East Greenwich, not just living in Rhode Island. You talk about these great bills that your caucus had when you were there, right? But like you couldn't get any of them passed. So you're like talking about bills, you were there for 6 years, none of them passed. What are you going to do differently if you're back there to get those bills passed? I don't think anything. You say, oh, you would love to know how many checks, like great talking point, but you were the rep there for 6 years. You probably could have found out some information about that. I do hear as this talking point a lot that there is this flight from Rhode Island, but that is not what I experience. It's not what I experienced when I knocked on doors in East Greenwich, and this is stuff that you had 6 years to change and you didn't. So there's no reason to think that, that's going to miraculously happen again should you get your seat back.
All right, we will move on. Anthony, you can have a little bit of a rebuttal. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, with all due respect, I think it's exactly that attitude that's the problem with the state. Like we're denying the fact that there's a lot of people that leave here because the place is really hard to live, and so many people are not going to their grandchildren's little league games, or they might have to fly home for a bar mitzvah or first communion. That's a fact. And what did I do about it? I screamed like hell from every rooftop. That's what I did. And maybe if more people did, and they were not just going along like a sheep, going along with House leadership on every issue, including that one, that's a big issue. And by the way, it's a big issue in East Greenwich. I hear it at the doors too. So many people say, I can't afford to stay here much longer. I hope, I don't know how much longer I plan to live, but I know I may not be able to live here. And that is a big problem, and we need to face up to that.
Okay, thank you. I want to be able to be a little flexible when we need that. So next question goes to Anthony first. In recent months, we've seen a widespread call for action to end police violence against Black people, as well as a wider conversation about how systemic racism has worked against Black people and hurt our country. What should Rhode Island do to address this issue? Also, do you support the Black Lives Matter movement? If not, why not? Hold on. Sorry.
Yeah, first of all, I just think that the thing that I consider more systemic than anything else is the systemic disrespect for law enforcement. I just think that when I was a kid, I grew up in a city. If a cop said stop, you stopped. We wouldn't even talk back to him. And I'm not saying that they're all cops are good cops, because I blame the unions in a lot of cases. I think the unions are protecting the bad cops, the bad firefighters, the bad teachers. That they can't be fired. That's where we should be talking. And by the way, I just have to say another thing. Thank God we have the law enforcement in Rhode Island that we have. We keep holding ourselves to a standard of other states. We have the best officers in the country, in my opinion. We have the best police chiefs that have respect of their law, of their men and women. And I just think sometimes it's just a smack in the face to call them systemic racist when we don't have that problem in Rhode Island. So I take exception to that. And as far as Black Lives Matter, I think Black Lives Matter. Of course I think Black Lives Matter. What I have a problem with is the organization. I think they have some major problems. You can say whatever you want about all this peaceful protest, but you know what? Men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie, and your eyes and ears don't lie. You can see burning stuff. You could see total violation, and these people are behind it. So no, I think it's a great name, Black Lives Matter. Of course, Black Lives Matter. Some of my best friends are black. I grew up in a black neighborhood. I have no problem saying that. I think I earned the right to say that. So yes, they matter, but I'm not crazy about that organization. I think they're a sheep. I think they're a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Okay. To you, Justine, in a minute, I just want to clarify, Black Lives Matter is not a riot-driven organization. Just to throw that in there as a little fact check. And now it is to Justine for the same thing. How do we handle systemic racism here in Rhode Island, and do you support Black Lives Matter?
Oh, thank you. I absolutely support Black Lives Matter, not just as a name, but as a movement to end systemic racism in the United States, especially here in Rhode Island. Anthony, your story about, listening to the police officers and how if someone told you to, stop, you would have done it in a heartbeat is a fine story. But the fact of the matter is, if the police officer tells you to stop and you don't, or, you don't deserve to get shot in the back and killed in front of your kids. I have two little kids. My kids are 5 and 8. They're in kindergarten and they're in 3rd grade. I had to, because, now my 3rd grader hears all of these things that are going on. School is back. They're, around their friends or around their teachers. And I had to explain what happened with George Floyd, that a police officer murdered him in broad daylight for no reason. Then I had to explain the story of Breonna Taylor, who literally got shot while she was asleep in her own home, by a police officer. All police officers aren't bad. Most police officers are great. But, that doesn't mean that we don't live in a country that, has real systemic racism, oftentimes in many departments, not just law enforcement departments, and it all needs to be fixed. We're growing up in a world where I'm talking to my daughter Lulu about, why did this happen to these people? And I tell them it's because they're Black. And, she has to say, well, I hope nothing bad happens to, names a little boy in her class who is Black. I mean, that is the world we are leaving to our kids right now if we don't work to end this kind of systemic racism in our law enforcement departments and every other department, and every other place of government, every other school, every other town. This isn't just like the responsibility of law enforcement officers to, end this problem we've had since, we were founded. And so I think it's really important. I think for our police officers in particular, we really need to allow them to invest more money in training for them. I don't think we should defund any municipal services that are already struggling. That is not the answer to this question at all. I think it is to provide more training, to provide more education to people, and make sure that in Rhode Island, we take a strong stand in saying that that kind of behavior is unacceptable. We cannot have Americans being murdered in the street by people and have those folks walk away.
Okay, thank you. I have questions, individual questions, one for Justine and one for Anthony, and because Justine is up, oh, sorry, Anthony, do you want a rebuttal? Excuse me, sorry about that.
That's okay. No, I just want to end with, sometimes I feel like the legislative actions are really solutions looking for problems. And I'm not saying that the possibility doesn't exist, but we're not those other states. And I think that our men and women in blue have been doing an impeccable job. I support them 100%. But at the same time, as I said before, I just want more authority to get rid of the bad ones. If they do something so bad, they should be able to they should be held accountable for it. And that means fired if you have to.
Okay. Thank you for that. So the next question will go to Justine first. And this is just for Justine. And then there's one for Anthony. I'm trying to figure out, do we need a rebuttal? I guess we'll play that by ear. Justine, you supported the Evergreen Bill, which keeps a union contract in place after it has expired until a new contract is signed. But the East Greenwich Town Council did not support it. How come you supported it? Hold on, I'll unmute you. All right.
Thank you. Yeah, I supported this bill for a lot of reasons. The town council did not support it, but the school committee, who negotiates those contracts, did not oppose it. And so, when you have a bill like this, it's a continuing contracts bill. You're thinking about a point in time where school is about to start or school is in session, right? And two parties cannot come to an agreement about how to move forward. So, you have a couple options. You could say, we're going to close school and the kids are not going to go to school. I think after the last 8 months, everyone would agree that is a terrible idea. You could say that the management side gets to unilaterally decide what the contract looks like, right? They can just make all the decisions. Or you could say the teachers union could just make all the decisions. Anthony, I don't know which one of those you think is the best way to handle it. I think the best way to handle it is to move forward with an already existing contract that both parties had agreed upon. And then they can continue to negotiate until they come to an agreement. And also the town council may have been against it. We don't see the five of them and me and Senators Valverde and Raptakis don't see eye to eye on every single issue. But the fact of the matter is all five of them still support me in this election. They still want me to be their rep. They still think that I am the one to go up there and do the best job to help the town. So, that is what that comes down to. Do we agree 100%? No, but this is the way fair labor practice has already worked. It did not cost East Greenwich any more money. It doesn't have a fiscal impact on the town. So it is the way fair labor practice already worked in East Greenwich. That was a practice already happening here. So it affected the town not at all. And they still support me, even though we disagreed on that issue. I read the bill, I heard the hearings, I heard the testimony, and I made the decision about what I thought was best. It's not good to leave kids home from school, and you can't let either side. What is your answer to? I think we could have a rebuttal. What do you think is the best way to solve that problem?
Okay, thank you. Anthony, would you like a rebuttal? Thanks for the sign language. That helps.
The universal language. I just think, in politics, sometimes to get to the answer to your problem, just follow the money. And just to see how many dollars come in from union-friendly PACs and organizations and things of that nature. And that should give you the answer to your question, why someone may support or oppose a certain piece of legislation. And in contrast, you can look at my campaign accounts and see how much money I get from firefighters or teachers unions or any other union for that matter. And I think that might answer itself. But what I would do is exactly what I did 2 years ago when that bill came up, and it passed the House and the Senate, and the governor, she vetoed the bill, which I commend her for that. This time around, she didn't. Why? I don't know. Maybe she thought she could be a vice presidential candidate or something else. I don't know why she would do that. But no, and as far as if you can't come to an agreement, Municipal, state workers and all, they can't go on strike. So it's not like the teachers are going to go on strike in August because they can't make a deal. And this bill here speaks volumes because every city and town was up at the State House. I saw it on the news. You saw it on the news. They were all going against it. So why in God's name will they allow a bill that every city and town manager, mayor, town council, city council would oppose, including most of them were Democrats? Why would you do that? It just ties their hands. You can't make a concession of 1 peso, because if you're going to offer 1 peso less because you're in tough economic times, they're going to say no. They're just going to keep working to the existing one. I just think it's just really, really bad government.
Okay, Justine, I'll give you a few seconds, just a short one if you can.
I want to clarify. I think you might want to go back and look at some of your own old campaign finance reports, because you certainly have donations from unions in there. So I want to clarify that, like, you get union donations, okay, I get them, bad. You support the speaker twice, okay. I get along with the speaker after voting against him twice, bad. So, I think everyone can feel free to go back and look at our campaign finance reports, because I'm certainly not the only one with donations from unions.
Apologies. Thank you. This one's to you, Anthony. Justine Caldwell introduced legislation to the House at the behest of the East Greenwich Town Council last year to allow the town to charge different residential and commercial property tax rates. If you had been in office then, would you have introduced that legislation? Hold on, let me unmute you.
Simple answer is no, because I don't want to raise anybody's taxes. We have such a small base of commercial properties in East Greenwich, and why do you want to hurt anybody? So what will be the net effect of that? Will they just go to another town instead of coming here? I just think that too many times we try to tax our way out of stuff, and eventually you don't have the money anymore. You don't have the sources anymore. So why, if someone is paying a certain dollar amount on their commercial buildings where there's, it's a vibrant, like Main Street's a perfect example. We have all these restaurants, we have law offices, real estate offices. How do you think they feel? I'm not saying that we were giving away the store to them, but I just don't agree with always trying to do things by increasing revenues. It's not a good formula. It's not sustainable. And what's next? When you do that, are they going to say, okay, well, let's do a tier. If you live west of Route 2, if you live east of Frenchtown Road, if you live west of Middle Road, where do you draw the line on where you can go with these things, with these tiered taxes? It's just a slippery slope, and I'm not a fan of it. So I would absolutely oppose that.
Okay, thank you. I'd love to get in a few quick lightning round things, and then we'll do closing. We're bumping up against 7, but we could go over just a bit. These would be quick, just a sentence or two answers, or even a word or two answer, if you can handle that. So let's start with, okay, that was Anthony. We'll go to Justine. And the question is, and I'm going to try and move quickly then. So do you trust mail ballots?
Absolutely. No reason not to. Everyone should vote by mail if they want to.
Okay, thank you. Anthony, do you trust mail ballots?
I would like to say yes, but there's a lot of room for error. Let's put it that way. I know my parents, one, God rest his soul, my dad passed away 3 years ago. He got one in the mail, a request for one. My mother got one, and she's a full-time resident in Florida. Anybody could have easily taken those and just said yes, and then they could be watching their mailbox. I just go back to, it's a concern to me. And, you know, the number one case in point was in 2016, where Speaker Mattiello was down by almost 200 votes on election night, and he was given a victory speech because he knew he had the votes in the bag. There's lots of margin for error and fraud, and I just think it's you know, going in person to town hall is great, and in person at the voting booth even better.
Okay, just to, I want to make sure I'm unmuted. Just to be clear, I actually, there are a lot of checks and balances, and there have not been any occasions where we have found widespread fraud. And now I'm making bad noises because I didn't mute you. Sorry about that. Okay, next question. It's going to start with you, Anthony. Do you support removing Providence plantations from the state name?
I
Sorry,
don't support it because I just think the narrative, they're making it seem like plantations means that you've got a bunch of slaves working on there. You know, plantations means a lot of things, and it was never meant to be slavery. So no, I don't. I'm a traditionalist. I think if it's really bad, it should show that way. But it's nothing wrong with it. It's been like that for 300 and some odd years. I don't support getting rid of that. Just like I didn't support removing TF Green from the airport.
Okay, thank you. Justine, do you support removing Providence plantations from the state's name?
I do.
Okay, all right. I have one more question, lightning round, and then we'll do closing statements. And so I'm going to go to you, Justine, first. Name a current political office holder you admire.
Oh gosh, that's such a hard question. Okay, a current political office holder that I admire.
It doesn't have to be in Rhode Island. It could be in
well, right now, I'm going to have to say our future vice president, Senator Kamala Harris. She is such an inspiration. She's an inspiration to my kids when we watch her on the TV speaking about being vice president. She has been such a great advocate for us on the Senate Judiciary Committee, talking to folks. And, you know, I think her story is really inspiring. I read her memoirs, and she has a wonderful story of her, you know, growing up with her really strong and independent and hardworking mom. And, you know, I think we could all look to her as an inspiration. And I cannot wait to call her Vice President Harris.
Okay, thank you. Anthony, the same question to you. And then we're going to move to closing statements. And you will lead off on the closing statements. So would name a current political office holder you admire.
Someone who's current, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Because someone who's not current is Joe Garrahy, the governor when I was a kid growing up. I love him dearly. And
okay. Somebody who's now, it could be somebody in Rhode Island or it could be somebody in the nation.
Yeah, so Joe Garrahy, probably all-time favorite, and he was a Democrat. But he was not partisan. I really appreciated that. And right now, I'd have to say, if I was to just come up with one name, Alan Fung. You know, the way he's run Cranston all these years without raising taxes, and his city is thriving, and he reaches across party lines just the way you're supposed to. I have to say, I commend him for that.
Okay, thank you. Let's move right into closing statements. And Anthony, you are first.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So again, Elizabeth, you know, I'd like to thank you and the East Greenwich Chamber and East Greenwich News and for the voters, of course, for tuning in. You know, whether you vote by mail, early in-person voting, or town halls, or the polls on November 3rd on election day, I humbly ask you for your vote. The best part about being a state representative is helping all the constituents, a job that I truly loved. There are clear choices in this election. You know, for the past 2 years, my opponent has not voted in your best interest. We can see the damage created during her 2 years in office. She helped to pass and champion legislation such as the Evergreen contract, despite heavy opposition by the towns and her constituents, which is now involved in a costly taxpayer litigation. She voted for other legislation that would negatively impact fiscal health of all cities and towns, and she also introduced two tiered tax system in East Greenwich that discourages business from relocating in our town. I would never favor special interest over your interest. Never. When asked, she's been unwilling to attend a West Greenwich Town Council meeting addressing critically important issues facing their town and her constituents there in West Greenwich. I have always responded to the towns in my district, and I always will. Furthermore, most of the damage that she created was completed in 1 year because she's been absent from her job for the past year. The majority party of the General Assembly have surrendered their role in state government since the onset of COVID-19. There's no legislative oversight on the executive branch, no budget until after the election. Cities and towns depend on predictable and stable funding for our schools, senior services, and other government functions. Not passing a budget puts East and West Greenwich in an unnecessary budget predicament. I'm proud to run for this office in an effort to rejoin the minority caucus that is calling for oversight of CARES Act funding, legislative oversight of the governor's handling of the pandemic passage of designated support person legislation, and many other initiatives to move Rhode Island from the lower rungs of most national rankings. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to express my views. And again, please vote for me as your state representative in District 30. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Anthony. And now to you, Justine.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Anthony's right. The choice voters have in this race is not complicated at all. It's a choice between a representative who stood up for education and got almost $1 million extra in the budget for East Greenwich schools, and a candidate who urged voters to reject the school bond that financed security updates to keep our kids safe. It's a choice between the Rhode Island House's leading advocate for gun safety and a candidate who voted every single time with the NRA, even when they told him to vote against a bill that would take guns away from convicted domestic abusers. It's a choice between a woman who is the only mom with young kids in the Rhode Island House and a man who went on conservative talk radio to brag about skipping a sexual harassment training and call it a dog and pony show. It's a choice between a representative who got her start in politics organizing for the LGBT community and one who voted against gay marriage and bragged at our 2018 debate that he would do it over again if he had the chance. But it is not just issues that separate us. It's how we approach them and how we conduct ourselves. It's a choice between a representative who believes in science and facts and a man who parrots Trump's and Fox News talking points, spreading fear about mail voting and voting against even studying climate change. It's about someone who works hard enough to upset a 3-term incumbent, and someone who misses a local gun violence forum because he was in Florida, who missed a vote on a gun bill because he was in Florida, and said that during the 6-month crisis with the last town council, he hadn't been paying attention because guess what? He was in Florida. It's a choice between a mom with little kids inspired to run for office by the election of Donald Trump and a man who is so proud to support Donald Trump that he pledged his support for him, put his name on the ballot, and represented him as a delegate at the Republican National Convention. It's a choice between a representative who knocks on every door, even Republicans, because I represent them too, and a man who vilifies his opponents, telling people who disagree with him and Trump that they should move to Venezuela, who says that I'm bought and paid for, and works with an organization that says I hate America. We have had enough of that over the last 4 years. Donald Trump has damaged our country. It will take work to fix it, and I will work hard to fix it, and my opponent will just continue the damage. And the choice is yours. Thank you.
Thank you both. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. And we have 73 people watching, I think, on Facebook right now. So, and this will be able to be shared. So again, thank you. We are going to end this broadcast. We are going to a new broadcast in about 5 minutes for the Senate District 35 Candidates Forum. Again, thank you very much, Anthony and Justine, and good night to you both.